In the modern world, the G-Wagon is an integral part of luxury. Superstars, footballers, politicians, anyone with even a bit of money buys this vehicle for themselves. Its top-tier version costs upwards of $250,000, presenting itself as nothing more than a rugged, boxy body and a large engine. What makes it so good, you ask? Could it be its uniqueness? Essentially, the G-Wagon has no real competitors. It exists in a vacuum, and nothing can quite compare to it. But what do we know about the history of this vehicle? How did a once military-designed off-road vehicle become one of the most luxurious automobiles? How did the Iranian Shah contribute to the creation of the G-Wagon? And why do people continue to buy a car whose design has remained largely unchanged for so many decades? But before, don't forget to support and follow our channel. In the 1970s, Iran was rapidly developing. The country was at the peak of its foreign policy and economic successes. During this time, owning an SUV for personal use was extremely rare and all over the world. Most people had sedans or small hatchbacks. Off-road vehicles were primarily used for military purposes. It was during these years that the Shah of Iran, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, decided to procure off-road vehicles for his country's military. Since Iran did not produce such vehicles themselves, they had to look for them elsewhere. At that time, the main suppliers of off-road vehicles globally were Toyota, with its Land Cruiser, Land Rover with its Series 3 model, and various versions of the Jeep Willys. However, the Shah wanted something new, a vehicle that nobody else had. He wanted an entirely new product for his army. Thus, in the early 1970s, the Shah approached the Mercedes-Benz company to manufacture this vehicle. This led to Mercedes collaborating with Steyr-Daimler-Puch, an Austrian-based manufacturer specializing in military equipment. Steyr-Daimler-Puch was renowned for crafting notable war machines such as the Pinzgauer, a military transport featuring available six-wheel drive systems. Expanding on this partnership, Mercedes embraced the Shah's idea to develop the vehicle into an all-wheel drive SUV, tailored for military purposes within his empire. But you might wonder why he turned to Mercedes specifically. After all, there were other companies producing off-road vehicles at that time, and Mercedes wasn't particularly known for its off-road vehicles. The main reason was that in the 1970s, the Shah was one of the major shareholders of the Mercedes company. So, naturally, he turned to the Germans. After long negotiations, Shah placed an order for over 20,000 off-road vehicles. Mercedes had no choice but to initiate the development and produce such a large number of automobiles. After all, who would want to lose such a significant client and investor? Mercedes-Benz developed both short and long wheelbases of G-Wagon. The shorter variant was available as a two-door ragtop or wagon, while the longer version exclusively came as a four-door wagon. Both estate models could be configured as windowless two-door vans, known as Kastenwagen. Beneath the robust exterior, these vehicles boasted sturdy construction, featuring a cubic body atop a ladder chassis, equipped with 3 fully locking differentials. Powering these models were a range of Mercedes engines. The lineup included 3 petrol and 3 diesel options. Unfortunately, the Shah never received his order of 20,000 vehicles. By the end of 1978, under the leadership of Ayatollah Khomeini, the Islamic Revolution began in Iran, resulting in the Shah's overthrow. Mohammad Reza Pahlavi had to flee the country, and he passed away from illness in 1980. The new leadership in Iran unilaterally canceled the car purchase agreement with Mercedes. Consequently, Mercedes found itself in a situation where they had already developed and produced a vast number of vehicles. A considerable amount of money and time had been invested. They had few options. The world saw the first civilian G-Wagon. Mercedes shifted away from the idea of a military vehicle and began producing the G-Wagon for civilian purposes. Within a few years, this vehicle was adapted for the American market, and it became beloved everywhere. The Shah will never see his creation, and Iran, after the revolution, regresses several decades back, although many will disagree with us. But there's a positive side to this story. We've got one of the greatest cars in the universe. There are no indifferent people when it comes to the G-Class. You either love it or hate it. It's a car that has become a legend in movies and outlaw stories. Eventually, Mercedes will make a huge amount of money from this model, And the G-Class will become the brand's most high-margin model, with an incredibly huge demand worldwide.